This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, a family's anger as they fight for answers over grooming gangs. 2 months ago, we brought you the story of Jodie Sheeran, who was raped in 2004. No one was ever convicted, but after her death 3 years ago, her parents and the son conceived from that attack renewed their campaign for justice. Prosecutors reviewed the case twice, but after the UK Tonight began investigating, it emerged that evidence prosecutors believed to have been deleted was actually still being held by the police, reopening old wounds for Jodie's family.
I was heartbroken and so angry as well, because, like I say, I've been fighting for, it's coming up to 3 years now.
Both the Staffordshire Police and the CPS didn't know what one another were doing. And it makes you so angry.
Also tonight, Donald Trump condemned by UK health experts. The US president claiming last night that there is a link between paracetamol and autism. He's been accused of spreading misinformation, with experts saying it is the president's comments that are dangerous, not the drug. Plus, we will always be here to support you. The Prince and Princess of Wales meet the parents of the Southport victims and visit the girls' schools to thank them for their role in helping the town to heal. And we pay tribute to revered cricket umpire Dickie, who has died at the age of 92. I'll be speaking to former England captain David Gower. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. I want to start tonight with a story that we first brought you back in July, the story of Jodie Sheeran. Now, Jodie was groomed by a gang in Stoke-on-Trent in 2004 when she was just 15 years old. Jodie was taken to a hotel and raped, and 9 months later, her son Jaden arrived. Jodie filed a complaint and a man was charged, but on the eve of the trial, the Crown Prosecution Service withdrew the case, and no one ever faced justice for her attack. Tragically, Jodie died 3 years ago, and since then her family has been fighting for justice and fighting for answers. They had been told by the Crown Prosecution Service that some of the evidence gathered at the time of the attack, namely the video of Jodie's police interview, was no longer available. It was only when the UK Tonight fully investigated this case that it emerged that that wasn't true. Police had retained all of the evidence, but it hadn't been made available to prosecutors who re-examined the case twice. Well, I've been speaking to Jaden, as well as Jodie's mum and dad, Angela and David, who are angry and frustrated over this news.
I was heartbroken and so angry as well, because, like I say, I've been fighting for, it's coming up to 3 years now. I don't know if I'd been misled, it was an accident, but, you know, to suddenly say that evidence has been there all along and I've got every single letter, every email to tell me that they hadn't got the evidence anymore, and then suddenly, you know, thankfully with all the help from Sky News, with them contacting me, which I'm very, very grateful for, it's emerged that Staffordshire Police did have the evidence after all. So it was shocking, really.
Yeah. Jaden, David, how did you both feel? Because, you know, for years, you clung on to that hope that if you just had that evidence, now that there was this renewed focus on tackling grooming gangs and taking the victims more seriously, reframing it and it being victim-centred and reopening old cases. What were your initial thoughts when you heard that actually that evidence was still there?
Heartbreaking, really, because to turn around and tell us that there was nothing there at all, it's all been destroyed, and then all of a sudden they found the evidence, the videos. To me, it tells me that both the Staffordshire Police and the CPS didn't know what one another were doing. And it makes you so angry, because if it's, you know, this is not just about us, but about other people who are going through the same thing. And it's heartbreaking, because you can't put things to bed, to sleep, you know, because you know they've got it wrong. The CPS and the police got it wrong. And I just think, you know, it's really, really terrible what they've done on us.
Sadly, despite the discovery of the evidence they said didn't exist anymore, the CPS came to the same conclusion that there wasn't enough there in Jodie's case to pursue a rape prosecution. But the wider point here, David, as you pointed out, is that you'd repeatedly asked for information for years and you were told categorically it does not exist. Yeah. This went on for 3 years. Jayden, as your granddad said, I would imagine you're sitting here tonight thinking, you know, how many other families are going through what we're going through, only to meet with this kind of denial of something being there, but perhaps it does exist. There's this contract that's been broken almost between your family and the police.
Yeah, I feel like they've got away with it type thing. They've dodged a bullet and now it's got further on. Like you said, they've told us that now they've found such and such evidence from before, but it's years on now. I'm grateful that they found the evidence, but what are they doing about it? That's my question. Things like that, like what are they going to do about it now? They found the evidence, are they going to finally crack down on it and knock it on the head and sort what's wrong?
And Angela, when we spoke before, it was recently after that review into grooming gangs and the way it was the way victims are dealt with by authorities. And not all families get the chance to come on TV like you do to talk about your experiences with the police and with the CPS. And they don't have the chance for journalists to follow up and ask questions. You must feel really upset and frustrated by that. Like we said, you know, more families out there, particularly when it comes to young girls being groomed by Asian men, may be sitting there thinking, we're coming up against the same kind of problems, but we haven't been afforded this platform.
I'd urge, like I say, it's took me over 2 years to get my voice heard. I've banged on every door, I've wrote to everybody you can think of. And for any victims out there, any families, I'd be saying to them, don't take no for an answer.
Asked to physically see.
Yeah, don't go away, you know, physically keep on. If it's the CPS you want answers from, if it's the police you want answers from, the government, just keep on and on and on. Let them know that you're not going anywhere. Just don't go anywhere. Just keep on and on and on, fighting and fighting, because I'm not going anywhere. Since losing a child, nothing else matters, so I'm going nowhere. So I will just keep fighting and fighting and fighting until I get what I've set out to be, which will be justice for Jodie and hopefully justice for probably the thousands of other victims that are out there as well.
Yeah. And just by coming on the television and speaking about it, as you are as a united family unit, you carry no shame.
No.
As you walk in here to talk about it on television.
Yeah, more than happy to,
And I think it's that stigma, isn't it? That, again, just by talking about it openly as a family, you're doing so much for people. Is that something that... Do you feel that's a weight on your shoulders, or, is this something you're embracing?
I'm embracing it because, like I say, if it brings other families, other victims to come forward and see that, it is possible to keep fighting and keep trying, get what you want, So by listening to us, hopefully there's other people out there, other young victims, other families, it'll give them the inspiration to perhaps talk out, or come forward. They could be sitting there worrying, frightened. It could have happened to them. So hopefully it does help some people that way as well.
It's like the government and the police and the CPS, it's time now to wake up, because these are our children who are being hurt, and there's adults out there who have been hurt, who are scared to come forward. And if we can't give them no hope, then what hope have they got when they're growing up? And we need to start, the government, the police and the CPS need to start waking up and having a good look at themselves.
Well, we put Jodie's family's concerns to the authorities that dealt with her case. The Crown Prosecution Service telling us this. We carried out reviews of our decision-making in this case in 2019 and 2023, using records provided by Staffordshire Police. Both these reviews found that there was not enough evidence to charge the suspect with rape. While we requested all available records, Jodie's video interview was not shared with us. We were not informed that it had been retained, and it was only made available to our prosecutors recently after further requests. Having cross-referenced the video with detailed accounts of it previously made available to us, we have determined that the conclusions we reached in our previous reviews still stand. Meanwhile, Staffordshire Police said today and throughout the investigation and reviews, our thoughts have remained with Jodie's family and friends. We do not underestimate what they have been through. The video recording of Jodie's interview from 2004 is still retained by Staffordshire Police. In August 2025, a copy of the recording was provided to the CPS, who conducted due diligence to ensure the contemporaneous written record of Jodie's interview that they reviewed in 2019 and 2023 was an accurate account of the video recording. They have confirmed this is the case. For further scrutiny, the case has been passed to our major crime review team for a further evidential review. Should any new evidence come to light, it will be referred to the CPS for their consideration. As we heard from the CPS and the police there, this revelation that some of the evidence wasn't made available to prosecutors will not lead to fresh action. But as Jodie's family said, if this has happened in their case, what's to say it's not happening elsewhere? The government announced that national inquiry into grooming gangs in June, and as part of that, up to 1,000 cases, just like Jodie's, could be reviewed. And it's Jaden, Angela and David's hope that other families will get the justice that so far evades them. In other news today, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting says expectant mothers should pay no attention to claims about paracetamol being linked to autism in their children. It comes after US President Donald Trump suggested the painkiller is the potential cause of what he called a meteoric rise in cases in the United States. Our health correspondent Laura Bundock has more.
Liz Bell is 9 months pregnant and due any day. It's her first baby, and she's taken paracetamol at different points of her pregnancy.
One of the things that you are always told you can have to manage pain relief is paracetamol. So for that to now be thrown into doubts and for lots of women around the world to now question whether they can have that pain relief I think it's awful.
Like all new mums, Liz has a lot of information to navigate, but was furious when she heard Trump linking autism to paracetamol.
I was really, really angry. I was angry because I knew myself before I'd even checked, because it's Trump, that there wouldn't be enough scientific evidence behind what he was saying. And then when I did do my own research, I saw exactly that. So I was angry that this misinformation was being spread on such a wide global stage.
Her anger is shared by many. April Austin teaches antenatal classes. She's also autistic and has a child with autism.
You come out and you say, oh, I have autism, people tend to look at you a little bit differently, and the favourite one I get is, you don't look like you're autistic. There is already so much misinformation and a lack of research and understanding of what autism is, and this just pushes the stigma onto autism being a problem.
Trump's advice has been robustly refuted by the Health Secretary.
I would just say to people watching, don't pay any attention whatsoever to what Donald Trump says about medicines.
A bit, yeah.
In fact, don't even take my word for it as a politician.
Okay.
Listen to British doctors, British scientists, the NHS.
And from NHS leaders, disbelief, anger and outrage.
We've done extensive research. We really understand the science behind this, and there is no evidence at all that paracetamol is anything other than safe. And in fact, we would encourage women who've been prescribed paracetamol to keep taking it, because we only prescribe medicines in pregnancy for very good reasons.
Experts from the UK, Europe and globally have united in response. Paracetamol is safe, and the far bigger risk here, believing President Trump's extraordinary rhetoric. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Milton Keynes.
Children sexually abusing other children has become a crisis in the UK. That's according to the country's only dedicated support service for survivors. The National Association for People Abused in Childhood has told Sky News there's been a pronounced rise in child-on-child abuse. And data for group-based offending shows it is now more prevalent than incidents involving grooming gangs. A warning, this report from Alice Porter features distressing content, including references to child sexual abuse and exploitation.
The massive rise in child upon child abuse, and I would say it's a crisis that's happening now.
Sky News is the first broadcaster to film inside the National Association for People Abused in Childhood, which provides the UK's only national helpline for all types of victims.
Take your time, I know it's difficult to have these conversations.
We discover disturbing new trends in offending.
Pornography is becoming more extreme, more violent. We've got a generation of boys that see that as normal behaviour.
And listen to shocking experiences endured by some young people.
They were buried to the point of death and then they were revived, and that was a ritual that they went through.
Asking what is the biggest threat to our children right now. We've been given exclusive access to NAPAC's support service based in Stockport. Every year they hear from around 10,000 victims. Through here is the helpline. Now, volunteers and staff receive calls and emails from all over the country, and victims could be talking about physical, emotional or sexual abuse. And in many cases, this is the first time they've told anyone about what happened to them. The first call of the day.
Hello, you're through to someone you can talk to?
A man who was so badly beaten as a child by his father that he was left with broken bones.
Are you seeing him on a daily basis now?
The victim is now having to look after his elderly abuser.
He's caring for his father, which is triggering all those unsafe feelings that he had when he was a child, so he's really struggling with that at the minute.
And was he just looking for someone to talk to you, do you think, or was it he was wanting signposting to other services? What do you think he was sort of wanting from the call?
He just wanted that safe space because he said just thank God there's people like you out there that I can talk to.
Since NAPAC started in 1998, they've become aware of trends when it comes to offending.
Ritual abuse is quite big as well.
What exactly do you mean by ritual abuse?
They have like robes on with hoods, and they could be a child or a teenager, and they are ritually sexually abused for a purpose, and that purpose could be to raise some kind of demon. We've had multiple callers that have talked to us about being triggered by the smell of soil. And their memory has been that they were buried to the point of death and then they were revived. Yeah, it's horrible, really horrible. And, you know, the staff had to have a lot of support.
Sadie, not her real name, was sexually abused by her biological father when she was a young child. Her testimony is portrayed by an actor.
It's the feeling in my body that I remember most from my childhood. Not just of the act itself, but of the constant feeling of being dissociated from your body, always having stomach aches, just feeling unclean. That was my body trying to tell me throughout my whole childhood, like screaming its alarm at me, going, "You're not safe, you're in danger."
Sadie emailed NAPAC, fully disclosing the abuse for the first time.
You just kind of assume that people are gonna fob you off a little bit. So for them to come back and be like, "We believe you, it's okay to feel what you're feeling, it wasn't your fault." It was very centred around me and where I was at that moment. I then contacted one of the agencies that they told me about and began having direct support for the abuse.
Like Sadie, young people are at risk of being sexually abused by family members. But through our time with NAPAC, we discovered a growing threat to our children, other children. The National Police Chiefs Council collates data on sexual offences against young people for England and Wales. It shows that, where age was recorded, over half of all perpetrators were between the ages of 10 to 17. That means in 1 year, over 39,000 children sexually abused or exploited other children. And when there was more than one perpetrator, child-on-child abuse is now the second highest and more common than child sexual exploitation, which includes grooming gangs. NAPAC works with the police in responding to group-based sexual offending.
One of the most shocking findings in 2024 is the massive rise in child-upon-child abuse. So that means within a group-based setting, 2 or more people, 24% of those are children committing serious sexual contact offences against other children. This represents a fundamental shift in this type of group-based offending. This is happening now, and I would say it's a crisis that's happening now.
The National Police Chiefs Council supports forces in tackling abuse, including child-on-child.
Over 40% of those crimes are crimes that relate to indecent images of children. And amongst those, the vast majority are self-generated images that have been taken by a child, usually a teenager, who shares it with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that is consensual. Where it changes is when a child is coerced into taking those photographs and sharing them. Children have access to pornography. That pornography is becoming more violent and it's become misogynistic. And because of that ease of access for a generation of boys in particular, then very often they see that as normal behaviour. They act it out with girls. 17% of crimes that are committed against children by other children are rape offences.
There's going to be an inquiry into grooming gangs. Given that your data shows that child-on-child abuse is more prevalent than grooming gangs, it does beg the question, will we see an inquiry in the future into child-on-child sexual abuse?
We can't criminalise a generation of children. So there needs to be that prevention, that education approach. But we've got to respond right the way across different types of offending, different methods of offending. Because if we don't do that and others get ignored, then you're absolutely right, that will be the next sort of critical thing that as a society we'll say we've failed with, and we can't afford to fail.
A government spokesperson said they are taking forward a wide range of actions to help prevent child sexual abuse, bring more offenders to justice and improve the support available to victims and survivors. It's estimated there are 11 million people in the UK who suffered childhood abuse. But threats to young people are evolving, the law often too slow in adapting. Those on the front line know the repercussions when abuse isn't stopped. The defiled childhoods, the damaged futures. With the scale of the problem described as endemic, preventing it is one of our greatest challenges. Alice Porter, Sky News.
Well, if you want to talk about what you experienced in childhood, you can call NAPAC support line. They're on 0808 801 0331, or you can email support@napac.org.uk. Still to come on the UK Tonight, we'll have the latest from Southport as the Prince and Princess of Wales meet the families of the young girls killed in last summer's attack.
secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Right, let's take you to the United Nations in New York. This is President Zelenskyy speaking to the assembled media there. Let's listen in to what he has to say.
And also we spoke about, we shared some details, and he shared with us, I think, even more, and some details about the economy of Russia. It goes, we think, very bad. Of course, still problem that they have a lot of cash. We know how they, this made money in Russia, made and make, but it's this is their way of life. Yes, the good news for us, because they spend money for war machine. The good news that the economy is in the bad shape. Bad news that they still have a lot of money, much money. Yes, but it's decreasing. And of course, in this case, we agree with President to stop buying any energy resources from Russia. In all the countries, I support him, of course, and I said to him that I had long conversation, by the way, long conversation with the Prime Minister of Slovakia. They are one of those countries who bought gas and oil. And I know the difficulties of logistic to get energy resources to some European countries. That's why they are searching and finding each time cheap way how to get cheap resources. But at the end of the days, they will pay 10 times more, and they will pay by their independence. We know it. In Ukraine, it was during a long period of time. Ukraine, because we neighboring with Russia, and of course, Russia gave Ukraine, sold Ukraine cheap energy resources, and it was a big mistake of Ukraine, big mistake, and we've been very dependent on it. And then Russia began to influence on your everything: independence, freedom, elections, parliament, a lot of things. And that's why I understand Slovakia that I think that they are ready to find alternative way. This is good. The bad news, I think, that Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, that he's not ready. And I think this is mistake, but all Hungary can't pay for the mistake of one person. And I think this is very important moment. But I hope that President Trump he has to deal with this, because he knows Orban. And other European leaders, I think they will also have dialogue with Viktor, especially EU countries. But maybe your questions.
Yeah, could I ask a question? Robert Moore from ITV.
Excuse me. Sorry, I have the question.
I'm feeling like President of the United States. I'm the President of Ukraine, so let's one by one.
Okay. Caitlin Dornbus with the New York Post. Wondering if you can talk a little bit how you were able to show the president what it looks like on the battlefield. We know he hasn't been to Ukraine, but really it seems like, especially in what you're saying and what he said in his Truth Social post, he has a new understanding of what's going on the battlefield.
He has had relations with Putin. And before my dialogue with him, he had these relations. And I don't know on what this relation based, but in any way he has it, and that's why he trusted that when Putin shared with him the situation in Ukraine on the east, that in one day, in 1 week, in 1 month, or these fairy tales that they will occupy totally our Donbass east, or part which we control. Yes, big part which we control. And of course he trusts him, and when then he back to me, President Trump, during phone conversations or dialogue, yes, he always said that, look, in autumn they will occupy it, we need to do something, and etc. And then one by one he understood that Putin is just sharing some information which is far away of a real situation on the battlefield, far away of truth. And of course, then when now he trusts much more bigger to me, because to the information what my intelligence and my military guys, military cabinet shares with partners. And I think this is one of the more. The second is understandable that, for example, in September, September? Yes, no, September. Good news. Yes, in September, we deoccupied it to about 360 kilometers. But I mean this, and we control about 200 and 160 under our. I mean, this is in Southport. So totally it will be about 400 kilometers. It's not about number of kilometers. It means that if you are winning, you can't give, I mean, this, or you can't back 400 kilometers 1 month. So all such moments, one moment, then second, then intelligent, then sword, and etc. So all this has influence on partners. Europe is closer, and of course they are closer. That's why they are more deep in this situation from the very beginning of the war. It's understandable why. The distance is short, everybody afraid. You see the war, what we said, that Putin will sell the war on different territories. And the same, and today President Trump agreed with me that I said he will not wait for the ending of war in Ukraine.
President Zelenskyy there speaking at a news conference in New York where the UN has been meeting over the last few days. Our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn is standing by and has been following events because in the past hour or so, Donald Trump appears to have signalled something of a change in approach to Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine. This is after meeting the Ukrainian president on the sidelines of this UN General Assembly.
That's right, SJ. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a Truth Social post he has posted, as you say, in the last hour, and it's caused a bit of a buzz around the media encampment here outside the UN. And kind of, have you seen this buzz? Because it is the most pro-Ukrainian, the most optimistic, I think, utterance that we've seen, either in speech or in writing, from Donald Trump, optimistic about Ukraine's chances of winning this war, than we've seen, and the most pessimistic about Russia. It looks like a kind of about turn of volte-face by the US president. So it looks like quite a moment. And in it he says, after getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win, in capital letters, all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. He goes on and talks about Russia being a paper tiger. He says it's fought for 3.5 years a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. It's not distinguishing Russia, he says, this fight. When the people living in Moscow and all the great cities, towns and districts all throughout Russia, he says, find out what's really going on with this war, the fact that it's almost impossible for them to get gasoline through the long lines that are being formed, and all of the other things that are taking place in their war economy, where most of the money is being spent on fighting Ukraine, which is great spirit and only getting better. Ukraine would be able, he says, to take back their country in its an original form, and who knows, maybe even go further than that, exclamation mark. Putin and Russia are in big economic trouble, and this is the time for Ukraine to act. And bear in mind that this is the same Donald Trump who's talked in the past in that very contentious spat he had with Zelenskyy back in February, saying that Ukraine did not have the cards in this war and that he should not have got into this war. At some points, he said that Ukraine started this war, but certainly should not have got involved in a war it could not win. He's now saying that Ukraine, he believes, has a good chance of winning. So something has shifted in his analysis, the president's analysis of this war, and whether it's what President Zelenskyy said to him today or whether he's just sort of gradually shifted in his position, it's not clear. But certainly something has changed, it seems, in President Trump's attitude. There have been two theories about Trump recently. One is the kind of rinse and repeat theory, which is that whatever happens, he goes back to the same position. So he gets annoyed with Vladimir Putin for attacking civilians and killing civilians in Ukraine, encouraged by his wife, who's also outraged by what Russia is doing. He warns Russia. Then he has a conversation with Vladimir Putin, and then he goes back to square one. So rinse and repeat in that sense. The other theory is a supertanker theory, which is that he is gradually, very, very slowly, like a supertanker, slowly turning, being shifted and brought round to Ukraine's point of view and the European allies' point of view, which is that Ukraine doesn't have to give up any chances of winning, and that Russia can be stopped in its naked aggression in Ukraine, particularly with the use of much more severe sanctions. Now, I think you have to obviously lace all of this with a huge amount of caution as well, because this is a mercurial, unpredictable president who says things and then goes right back on them. I just put this Truth Social post to a senior Western diplomat, and he said, I mean, his eyebrows were certainly raised by it. He hadn't seen it, but he said, yeah, but don't forget, go back to what Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump were talking about, the Kim Jong-un train, where it looked like Trump was really going to hold Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator, to account and change things dramatically between America and North Korea. And eventually Donald Trump sort of just gave up on that and went back to square one. So with this president, anything is possible. But it has to be said, this is the most dramatic shift I think we've seen yet in the way the US president thinks about Ukraine, thinks about its chances of winning. There's always been an assumption that Russia would keep some of Ukraine it's taken by force. And in this Truth Social post, Trump is saying actually it could take back all that territory, but possibly take even more. He's sort of hinting there that Ukraine could conquer a chunk of Russia. So it's an extraordinary outburst from the president. It follows, of course, the speech he gave at the UN General Assembly, during which he gave no sort of inkling, no hint that he was going to come out with this later on this afternoon. It's raising all kinds of eyebrows. A lot more is going to be asked of the White House, but you can see why President Zelenskyy there was smiling and looking the happiest he's looked for a long time.
Dominic, thank you. Dominic Waghorn there with the latest from New York on that dramatic shift from the US president on the war in Ukraine. Much more to come from 9 o'clock in the world with Yalda Hakim, who also is in New York following that UN General Assembly. Now, the Prince and Princess of Wales visited Southport today to show support for the family of those caught up in last summer's attack. William and Kate also spoke to teachers and pupils at the schools attended by the 3 young girls killed in that attack: Elsie Stankham, Alice Da Silva Aguiar and BB King. Visiting a new memorial playground, the royal couple praised their remarkable legacies and said love will always overcome tragedy. Our Chief North of England correspondent Greg Milan has this report.
For the royal couple, as for so many families, the horror of Southport struck a particular chord. This was a return visit to show their continuing support for a community still mourning those 3 young girls. At the school where Elsie Stankham had been a pupil, they met some of those who should have been her classmates today.
Yeah, all good? Enjoying school?
It was away from the cameras. They met Elsie's parents, just as they did almost a year ago. At the school where BB King and Alice Da Silva Aguiar had been pupils, they met classmates who are using an art project as therapy.
Do you all love drawing and painting?
Yes. The rain represented our tears.
They also saw the new playground opened last week in memory of BB and Alice, a symbol the Prince said that love overcomes tragedy. The couple spending time with BB's parents, wearing the friendship bracelets from her mum.
She's been honoured so well. It's really nice.
And meeting Alice's parents too.
It's a really lovely space down here now for all children.
And paying them all this tribute.
To Alex and Sergio, Lauren and Ben, Jenny and David, you are parents united in grief. You have faced such horror, But from that, you move forward with grace and fortitude, creating the most remarkable legacies for your girls. We will always be here to support you. And to everyone impacted on that day, you will never be forgotten.
It is very special to have them here, coming to see what we all done together in memory of the girls. We turn something very tragic into a positive thing for all of our children, and they are happy, they are enjoying. So it is really nice having them here.
I think we're really grateful anyway how BB has been honoured so much in this school, and the fact seeing the Prince and the Princess support that and be here has been just amazing.
The couple met families and a community that can't yet move on from last July. There are so many questions about how it was allowed to happen, and the hope that the public inquiry going on now will provide them the answers. The events of that day, the Prince said, remain difficult to comprehend. There may be a lesson in what he says the girls' classmates have done. Support each other and remember in their own way. Greg Milam, Sky News, Southport.
GPs will now be told to take a 3 strikes and rethink approach to diagnosing patients under a new rule to prevent avoidable deaths. The government's new safety initiative will ask general practitioners in England to reconsider diagnoses if patients have had 3 appointments or if a patient's condition worsens. It's named Jess's rule, after Jessica Brady, who died from cancer despite having had 20 GP appointments in the months leading up to her death. I've been speaking to her mum, Andrea. We started our conversation with her telling me about Jess.
She just had so much that she was planning and looking forward to. You know, she was a great writer of lists and she loved travelling. But she was mostly a really, really thoughtful and considerate young woman, and it was an absolute privilege to be her mum.
Well, Andrea, she was 27 when she started to feel unwell. She went to her GP, as you're meant to do when you're not feeling at your best and you have whatever symptoms it may be. But she found herself repeatedly going to the GP. In fact, she went to the GP 20 times. What was she telling you during that time about this repeated battle she had trying to get her general practitioner to take notice of her symptoms?
She did, in all honesty. I think it was against character. She felt like she was making a fuss, but obviously, increasingly, her symptoms were escalating with weight loss and vomiting and night sweats and enlarged glands in her neck. And she really did know her body. So she felt she had no choice but to keep making contact.
Yeah. 20 appointments until her diagnosis with stage 4 cancer. Jess's cancer so advanced that there was no available treatment for her. She was admitted into hospital where she sadly passed away 3 weeks later. Can you talk to me about that time? Because Jess knew something was wrong, but she wasn't being listened to. Can you talk to me about those 3 weeks?
I mean, I was absolutely devastated, but I think there was some element of relief for Jess that she had an explanation initially, but the following day came the terrible news that it was stage 4 and there was absolutely no treatment for her. There was no, chemotherapy or anything. She would just receive palliative care. But during that time in hospital, I honestly was in absolute awe of her. She was incredulous. She was obviously devastated by the news. You know, she was a young woman with life ahead of her. She had a boyfriend, they were living together, she had loads of plans. But I marvelled at her calm attitude and her kindness to all the medics. You know, they openly wept at the end of her bed when they spoke to her, because I think they were just so moved to meet Jess, because she was just full of such integrity and kindness, really. I mean, in a strange way, I feel so thankful I did have that time. We all had that time with her. But obviously it was way, way too short.
I would imagine now introducing Jess's rule, you reflect on the time wasted and the opportunities missed. And you want to make sure that no other families go through what you and your family and Jess went through. Talk to me about the purpose of Jess's rule.
Yeah, so the purpose of it, because we really felt after we lost Jess, we sort of wrote a list of how we could make a difference, what needed to change and who we needed to talk to. And one of the main things was the fact this repeated returning to her GP. And that soon became, you know, what we said was Jess's rule, that when a patient returns to their GP on the third occasion, that their case should be elevated for review. And it became this rethink, 3 strikes and we rethink, inviting GPs in a supportive way. You know, we want to work positively with GPs. We know that many GPs embrace this rule and they want to make it work. But it's inviting them to have a fresh eyes approach and to really go back and start again, listen again to what's been said, because if somebody's returning for the 3rd time, clearly there's something wrong if they're not improving or their symptoms are escalating.
The government and health bosses have responded to this story. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, saying Jessica Brady's death was a preventable and unnecessary tragedy. Patient safety must be the bedrock of the NHS, and Jess's rule will make sure every patient receives the thorough, compassionate and safe care that they deserve, while supporting our hard-working GPs to catch potentially deadly illnesses. Meanwhile, Professor Camilla Hawthorne, chair of the Royal College of GPs, said no GP will ever want to miss signs of serious illness such as cancer. If a patient repeatedly presents with the same or similar symptoms, but the treatment plan doesn't seem to be making them better, or their condition is deteriorating, it is best practice to review the diagnosis and consider alternative approaches. We hope that by formalising this with Jess's rule, it will remind GPs to keep this at the forefront of their minds. Legendary cricket umpire Dickie has died at the age of 92. The proud Yorkshireman stood in 66 Test matches over a 23-year career, but transcended his role as umpire to become one of the most recognisable figures in his sport. Yorkshire County Cricket Club, where he was made president, described him as one of the greatest characters in Yorkshire's history. I'm joined now by former England cricket captain David Gower. It's good of you to come on, David, to share your memories and thoughts of Dickie Bird. I mean, so many people paid tribute to him while he was alive, which was a great thing. I'm looking at a quote from Viv Richards here. "The best Test umpire I have ever seen. There will never be another to touch him."
Very lovely. SJ, good evening. The thing about Dickie was, I guess, this. First of all, there are basically 2 things you need as a top umpire. One is the ability to make the right decisions. And by the standards of the day, he made most of the right decisions beautifully. And secondly, as Viv quotes suggest, you have to be able to get on with the players on the field, be they English, West Indian, Australian, Asian, wherever they come from. You have to have that sort of ability to gel, to diffuse awkward situations. And Dickie had I suppose, an overriding love of the game, which everyone recognised. So if there was, for instance, I mean, a perfect example, I guess, is if there was a decision going against a bowler, be it, shall we say, Michael Holding, Andy Roberts, Malcolm Marshall, anyone like that, or any of the Australian bowlers of that same era, if the decision went against them, a smile and a giggle from Dickie would just diffuse any potential dissent, and people got on with it. So they loved him, they respected him, and that's why there is such an outpouring of regret and fondness on his passing today.
Yeah, so many tributes to him as a professional, as a great umpire, but also as a great man. As I said, they're a proud Yorkshireman. And he was very straight-talking, as you said, liked to laugh with the players, didn't take himself too seriously. What are your favourite memories of him, David?
Well, he wasn't allowed to take himself seriously by some of my still friends, former colleagues. The likes of people called Botham and Lamb, who
they were on Sky
love
News
to
earlier
play
recounting their
practical jokes.
pranks.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard them many times, but I mean, there are things like the mobile phone at Worcester. Lamb and Botham collaborated, put a mobile phone in Dickie's pocket, said, "Look after this, please. There's something very important coming through." And they walked out after lunch, and of course the phone goes. Dickie's umpiring at whichever end it might be, and is discombobulated by this ringing phone, and hands it to Botham or Lamb, whichever one. This is for you, apparently. Lammy once he told me a story in India, I think in Delhi, where in the hotel where we were all staying, it was well guarded, as you can understand in those days, way back by the military. And on every floor, there was a man with a loaded rifle. And Lammy persuaded one of these guys to knock on Dickie's door and pretend there was something wrong. So you can imagine Dickie Bird, innocent, naive, lovely, opening his door to an armed military person with a gun saying, "Mr. Bird, we need to arrest you," or worse to that effect. And he took it all with his customary good grace. I mean, Dickie was just a lovely, lovely man. And I think, I say, that sort of love for the game, that enthusiasm for the game, he was so chuffed when they made him president at Yorkshire, because he loved Yorkshire, Barnsley through and through, Yorkshire through and through. And to have that honour thrust upon him was just the absolute making of it.
Yeah, I mean, he was revered in so many circles. He really did transcend the sport. He got invited for lunch with the Queen, and he actually tells a story about when he got that phone call from, a member of staff at Buckingham Palace, and he didn't quite believe whether it was true or not, maybe because of Lamb and Botham and all of those pranks. But you mentioned... Yeah. You mentioned Yorkshire, such a proud Yorkshireman. He said it was, the highlight of his professional and personal life to be made president of Yorkshire County Cricket Club. Just talk to me about his relationship with Yorkshire, because, of course, he had a box named after him there. He was there long after his career ended, watching the cricket.
And the clock, don't forget the clock. I mean, the Dickie ticker is still there at Headingley, lovingly inscribed now in his memory, at the time in his honour. I mean, the truth is this: he played for Yorkshire first, briefly, had a brief career at Yorkshire, moved to my first county, Leicester, again briefly, had one big score there, but they realised that it wasn't going to be a long career for him as a batsman in professional cricket. Then the transfer to umpiring, which he did with all due diligence, huge enthusiasm. And I know full well when the time came for him to retire. I mean, there was a tear in his eye during his last Test match appearance as an international umpire, and he wiped those tears away with his handkerchief. So he would have missed it. He had that sort of void, I think, after he retired from umpiring. So someone had to fill that void for him. And I think all his friends in Yorkshire, who maybe lost touch a bit for a while, but all his friends in Yorkshire and the Yorkshire Cricket Club themselves realised that he was a very, very special man, realised that, let's face it, I'm not going to court controversy here, but Yorkshire cricket has been bedevilled by the odd argument over the last 100 years. Yorkshire committees have loved a bit of an argument, but Dickie was the perfect man to diffuse all that. I mean, you cannot imagine Dickie having a long-standing grudge against anyone or any sort of long-standing argument. So to have him in that figurehead position as president, I think was actually a really, really good move by Yorkshire cricket.
Oh, well, David, it's been a pleasure to speak to you about Dickie. Thank you so much for taking the time, remembering Dickie Bird there, the icon of cricket. Thank you so much for your time, David Gower there. Let's get a look at the rest of the sport now. David Garrido is standing by.
SJ, thank you. Liverpool have paid tribute to their women's double-winning manager, Matt Beard, ahead of tonight's Carabao Cup third-round tie with Southampton. Beard passed away at the weekend at the age of 47. There was a minute's silence before kick-off at Anfield. Beard led Liverpool to back-to-back WSL titles in 2013 and 2014 before returning for a second spell at manager, which ended in February. Well, on the pitch, dramatic 38 seconds before half-time, Southampton missed a golden chance. Adam Armstrong hitting the bar, Leo Shenza completely missing the rebound. Liverpool then went straight down the other end and made it 1-0. Federico Chiesa setting up Alexander Isak for his first goal since a British record transfer from Newcastle. Well, a big shock had looked to be on the cards at Lincoln. They went well up against Chelsea. Mistake from Enzo Fernandez-Alang robbed Street to score, but Chelsea have just scored twice early in the second half. The League One side now trail by 2-1. It's all happening at Barnsley as well. Take a look at this effort from Brighton's Diego Gomez. It completed a first-half hat-trick for the Paraguayan in just 33 minutes. Wow, 3-0, the Premier League side lead. Elsewhere, Cardiff 2-0 up at Burnley, Wolves 1-0 up at Everton. England's squad for this winter's Ashes series has been announced, with Harry Brook replacing Ollie Pope as vice-captain. But the biggest surprise came among the batters, with Surrey's Will Jacks included for the first time in 3 years. Jacks is included as the spin-bowling all-rounder, with there's only 2 previous caps coming in the victorious tour of Pakistan in 2022. He's been preferred to Ryan Ahmed and Liam Dawson. Otherwise, it's England's regular top 7, joined by Jacob Bethell as the reserve batter. There's a soccer special live right now on Sky Sports News. All of the Carabao Cup ties live on Sky Sports Plus. We're back here a bit later on.
Let's take a look at the weather now before we go. High pressure keeping the weather largely fine this week, but it may turn more unsettled over the weekend. Most places dry and calm this evening, but the breezy southeast of England will see showers. Kent looking most at risk with some heavy downpours. It's going to be another chilly night under clear skies with a rural frost in parts of the north and west. A few showers running across eastern and central England, but elsewhere it's looking dry with isolated fog patches forming. Mainly dry for tomorrow morning with plenty of sunshine, but England and Wales will see the odd light shower. Temperatures will be around average again with a brisk wind in the far northwest and southeast. That's all from the UK tonight. Coming up next is Yalda Hakim with The World live from New York, and more on Donald Trump's dramatic change on the war in Ukraine.